Welcome to Critical Literacy as in Action, Cultural Literacy for Adult Learners Workshop. Presentation by Rebecca Williams. Introduction, Purpose, and Learning Outcomes. Introduction. In an increasingly diverse and interconnected society, adult learners must possess the skills to navigate cultural complexities. Misunderstandings rooted in cultural bias can hinder workplace collaboration, customer relationships, and civil participation. Purpose. The training is designed to enhance an adult learner's capacity to recognize and challenge cultural bias, appreciate multiple worldviews, and apply cultural responsive communication in professional and educational settings. Learning outcomes. At the end of this workshop, participants should be able to define cultural literacy and explain its relevance to adult education and workplace diversity, identify personal cultural assumptions and their influence on communication and decision making, be able to apply strategies for inclusive interactions in multicultural environments, critically analyze power dynamics that shape cross-cultural relationships, develop an action plan to promote cultural awareness within their professional or community settings. Sources, theories, and concepts. 1. Critical multiculturalism and cultural relevant education. This will go beyond celebrating diversity, challenges systems of privilege, examines relations based on race, gender, class, and culture, encourages educators to link classroom practice to equality and social justice, promotes cultural relevant teaching that values learners' cultural backgrounds. 2. Female pedagogy. This focuses on relational learning, shared power, and the inclusion of the lived experience. Learning is both a personally liberating and socially transformative experience. Recognizes intersectionality, which is how race, class, gender, and sexuality shapes somebody's identity, promotes a safe environment where all voices are heard and valued. 3. Postmodern and constructivist perspectives. Postmodern. There is no single truth or fixed definition of culture. Knowledge and meanings are socially constructed and context dependent. Constructivism. Adult learning is best when they are actively constructed, meaning from experience and dialogue rather than passively receiving information. 4. Transformative learning theory. Learning occurs through critical reflection and perspective transformation. This encourages questioning taken for granted cultural beliefs, leads to personal growth and inclusive professional practices. Proposed contexts where this training would be appropriate: workplace diversity and inclusion programs, adult education centers seeking to create culturally inclusive classrooms, human resource development contexts that promote equality, belonging, and cross-cultural leadership, and community organizations working with multicultural or immigrant populations. Activities for this workshop. Where is the best place context to have these activities? These activities are valuable in diversity and inclusion programs, leadership development, or educational training, where greater cultural awareness can foster empathy, understanding, and more inclusive interactions. Activity 1, Cultural Identity Map. Who am I? What is being done? The purpose of this activity is to build self-awareness of how participants own cultural identities, influence their perception, communication style, and interactions with others. Descriptions. Participants visually will map out cultural influences that shape who they are. This will include, but not limited to, family heritage, language, values, religion, gender roles, social economic status, and education. Where is the best context to have this training? This activity is especially valuable in diversity and inclusion programs, leadership development, or educator training, where greater cultural awareness can foster empathy, understanding, and more inclusive interactions. For materials, the facilitator will need a copy of the blank template of the cultural identity map, which would be provided to them. This can be sent via a virtual platform such as Teams, email, or can be printed off for in-person sessions. Steps for this activity. First, introduction. The facilitator will begin by showing a sample of the cultural identity map. Then individuals will work on completing their own map, either on a worksheet or a digital board. Then everyone will regroup and have a debrief. The facilitator will lead by asking reflection questions, such as how do your cultural influences affect how you perceive others? Which part of your identity gives you privilege or creates barriers? Examples. As someone raised in a military family, punctual and directness is very important to me. I realize others might see me as rigid when they come from cultures that value flexibility and relationship building first. Or growing up in a bilingual household, I learned to switch languages depending on who I was speaking to. This made me more adaptable in conversations, but I also realized I sometimes change how I express myself to fit in, which can make me feel like I'm leaving out a part of my identity behind. Participants will share one part of their identity that most affects how they see the world and interact with others. Activity 2. When cultures collide, a case study dialogue activity. What is being done? Purpose. The purpose of this activity is to develop skills in recognizing cultural misunderstandings and applying cultural responsive strategies. Description. Small groups analyze realistic work or classroom scenarios that involve cultural tension or misunderstanding. No added materials are needed. Process. 1. Case distribution. Each group receives a short case study. 2. Group analysis. Groups will discuss the situation and identify cultural factors that may be influencing behaviors. 3. Solution brainstorming. Groups will create 2 or 3 culturally appropriate responses or solutions. 4. In a group setting, groups will present findings and strategies. Evaluation plan. Pre and post assessment surveys to measure participants' understanding of key concepts and attitude toward cultural diversity, observation and participant checklists to assess engagement during discussion and activities, reflective journals to evaluate the evidence of critical awareness and personal insight, follow up feedback surveys 2 weeks post training to determine how participants have applied cultural literacy practices. Conclusion. Cultural literacy is essential for fostering inclusive, equitable, and transformative adult learning environments. For adult educators and human resource development professionals, cultivating this literacy means moving beyond surface level tolerance to engage in critical dialogue about culture, power, and privilege. This training empowers learners to question assumptions, embrace diversity as a strength, and act as a change agent in their workplace or communities.